out there. So I'm Sherry Moore. I'm the division chair for Applied Behavioral Sciences, and I'm also co-chair on the Wellness Committee here at Cuesta College. So the Wellness Committee has been working in conjunction with tobacco control here in the county public health on several issues. And as you may know, that Cuesta College January 1st is going to be 100% tobacco free. And so we've been working on a lot of different aspects of that. But today, we'll let these two explain to you more of what they're going to talk about. But I'm going to tell you who they are. So Inger Appanaitis, yes, is the program manager for tobacco control at the County of San Luis Obispo Public Health Department. She earned her Master of Public Health in Epidemiology and Biostatistics from Oregon Health and Science University, and has been working in the field of non-communicable diseases for the past 5 years. She specializes in addressing health disparities among diverse populations, including working on improving public health infrastructure in the U.S.-affiliated Pacific Islands and providing technical assistance on diabetes care and outcomes among urban American Indians. And we have Ashley Allen, is a certified health education specialist, earning her Bachelor of Science in Health Science with a health education option from Chico State University. At the county, Ashley focuses on tobacco use and prevention among young adults and oversees campus-related activities and policy development at both Cuesta College and Cal Poly. She also holds a special interest in tobacco's impact on the environment and other environmental issues, including climate change. So, welcome to these two, and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Sherry.
Sure.
Before we get started, we have a small audience today, but I was wondering if there's any things you'd heard about e-cigarettes or any questions that can help frame the conversation from the get-go.
I know a lot of people say that the nicotine in vapes isn't bad for you and it's like better than cigarettes, but my mom's a nurse, so she's like, no, it's bad for you.
Yeah, so you're right, there is a lot of confusion about what exactly is in an e-cigarette. Nicotine is a big issue with e-cigarettes, and the technology around nicotine is changing a little bit, so now we're seeing more, it's like salt-based nicotines rather than the free-based nicotines, which have a little bit different reaction in your body. We titled this presentation "The New Face of Tobacco" because really e-cigarettes and vaping devices are what we've been talking about in the tobacco control world for the past 2 or 3 years. They were introduced into the U.S. in about 2007, and they've really changed the landscape around smoking, vaping, e-cigarettes. To set the stage a little bit, since the Surgeon General released their first report on the dangers of smoking in the 1950s, we've seen a steady decline in tobacco use smoking among the U.S. population, and in fact, just recently the CDC released a new report showing that adult smoking rates are at an all-time low. Unfortunately, what we've seen over the past decade, especially among the youth and young adult population, is that conventional combustible cigarettes have been completely replaced with e-cigarettes. So a little bit of the progress that we've made in the young adult population has been, in fact, reversed with e-cigarettes. So what we're fearing in the public health world is that there's this new epidemic taking off among e-cigarette use in young adults. So what's the bottom line? There's a lot of things we don't know about e-cigarettes. Again, since they've only been on the market for about 10 years, we don't have a lot of longitudinal studies showing the long-term effects of these e-cigarettes, both on the individual and on the societal level. The National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine did put out a report in early January. They reviewed 800 published peer-reviewed articles on e-cigarettes. And they came up with 2 basic conclusions. One, when you're talking about adult smokers, there's very limited evidence that e-cigarettes may be effective aids to promote smoking cessation. So what this means is that there's mixed results. There's some small studies that show that they are effective aids. There's others that show there's no significant difference between e-cigarette use and other, for example, FDA-approved cessation devices or even cold turkey. And so as a tobacco control program, when we work with adults, we tend to stick with the FDA-approved tobacco cessation methods such as nicotine replacement therapy. The other big population we're concerned about, as I mentioned, is the youth non-smokers. So these are people that either haven't previously used tobacco products or maybe never would have used tobacco products. And what we're seeing is that there is already substantial evidence that e-cigarette use by youth and young adults increases their risk of ever using a combustible cigarette. So again, this is where we're really scared that there's going to be a reverse trend and these e-cigarettes are really taking off among the young adult population. I tend to say e-cigarettes a lot. There's a lot of names for these devices. Probably most commonly you hear them referred to as vapes, vape pens, vaping devices, Juuls. There are other brand names. Originally they were called electronic nicotine delivery systems, which is a very accurate but technical term for them. So throughout the presentation, I'm going to continue to refer to them as e-cigs or e-cigarettes. This is kind of represents the evolution of the e-cigarettes. So they're labeled 1, 2, 3, 4 to represent these different generations. But basically what you're seeing on the left side of the screen is the original e-cigarette. It was invented by a Chinese pharmacist as a cessation aid. It looks exactly like a traditional combustible cigarette, and it was disposable. Then you started to see things get a little bit bigger in the second generation and the third generation. You have products called e-hookah coming along, and more of the use of these flavors associated with the vape pens. The purple one in the middle would be what we thought of as a vape pen maybe 5 years ago, and then the mods and tanks, modifiable ones, rechargeable devices. And now over on the right-hand side, under the number 4, you have the more recent generation, which are these high-tech devices, very sleek. They look nothing like a regular cigarette, and that's kind of the point, is that young adults now are using these products, and they're not the same. They don't associate it with what their parents or their grandparents were smoking 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's a very different product and a very different trend. So one of these products, the Juul on the left-hand side, I think most recently I saw that it represented about 60% of the e-cigarette market, so it's really taken off. It was introduced in 2015. And then there's been several replicates since then, the Fix, Infinix, the Kilo Vappuccino. These are all very small, very sleek devices that can fit into the palm of your hand. It's a huge issue with high school and young adults because you can hide these devices very easily. They're very discreet. They're easy to take a couple hits and put them back in your pocket because they don't have that burning combustible element to them. What's in the e-cigarette aerosol? A lot of people call this a vaping device or vapor, but it's not a vapor. When we think about vapors, like it's not a harmless steam coming out of these products. It's actually an aerosol. So there's a lot of particulates in this aerosol that can be dangerous to your health. So that's another reason the public health officials make it an effort to not refer to them as vaping devices, because that's kind of promoting this idea that it's a harmless vapor coming out of them. So it's true that as far as we know, e-cigarettes contain fewer toxins than traditional cigarettes. You don't inhale carbon monoxide because these aren't burning, combusting. You also aren't inhaling tar like you did with combustible cigarettes, but that's not to say that they're toxin-free. So I think it's often quoted there's like 7,000 chemicals in a traditional cigarette. So saying that there's fewer toxins doesn't mean that there's safe levels or no toxins. So here are some of the chemicals found in an e-cigarette aerosol. The ones that are highlighted in yellow are on the FDA's list of harmful and potentially harmful substances. So you can see a lot of the ones, those ones in yellow are in traditional, conventional cigarettes, and the ones in blue and yellow are also found in e-cigarettes. So there's a lot of overlap in the chemicals between the two products. There's also several items on this list that are on the Prop 65 list of cancer-causing chemicals for the state of California. Acetaldehyde, benzoprene, cadmium, these are all chemicals that we know cause cancer. So they have cancer-causing chemicals. Heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead, a lot of those are leached from the battery element in the vaping device. Ultrafine particulates that are often smaller than the particulates you inhale with a conventional cigarette. Flavorings that includes elements such as diacetyl. Have any of you heard of diacetyl in reference to the popcorn lung? So the popcorn lung is one of our strongest arguments for why these things are dangerous. So diacetyl is a flavoring element that was first found to be harmful among popcorn factory workers. It's a buttery flavoring used in popcorn, and what they found with these workers in the factory was that they were getting these lung conditions that they trace back to diacetyl. It's an irreversible scarring of the lungs. It can be treated, but it can't be resolved. And the big issue why it's so kind of controversial at this point is, again, we don't have these long-term studies showing e-cigarette smokers are developing this. We know that diacetyl causes popcorn lung. We know that diacetyl is in e-cigarettes. We just can't say yet that e-cigarettes are causing popcorn lung. So this diacetyl can't be, or excuse me, this popcorn lung condition can't be seen with an x-ray. It has to be done with a CAT scan or a lung biopsy. So that's again why it's kind of hard to link popcorn lung to e-cigarettes. But we know that it's in it. A study by Harvard found that 76% of the e-liquid juices that they tested contained diacetyl. And then of course nicotine. Nicotine is in about 98% of e-juices on the market. There are some that are labeled as nicotine-free, but we still find that, for instance, like with caffeine-free coffee, there's still trace amounts of nicotine in the e-juice. And then what we're also seeing is that in addition to nicotine, other drugs can be used in these products. So another upcoming trend is people using their vaping devices for THC and then other illicit drugs. So some of the health effects that we're starting to see with e-cigarettes are these unintended injuries, such as the vaping device exploding. You've probably heard about that in the news. It's becoming more rare, but especially with the earlier models, it was a significant risk, and you can see videos of that on YouTube. Also acute poisoning, such as when a small child gets their hands on the e-liquid and swallows that substance. We also know that e-cigarettes cause throat irritation, lung inflammation, asthma, decreased immune response. These have been shown in animal models such as mice, where the mice have decreased immune response in regards to pneumonia and influenza. And it's also causes heart disease. So just in April, the University of California, San Francisco came out with an analysis of 70,000 people, and they found a significant relationship between daily e-cigarette users and the risk of having a heart attack, which is about double among e-cigarette users. So we're starting to see a lot of these health effects come into fruition, these long-term health effects. And when you look at this list, a lot of the elements on this list are commonalities that you'd also see with conventional cigarettes. So saying that they're safer really isn't what we're starting to see as we get these better long-term studies. So we discussed the nicotine in e-cigarettes. When surveyed, 66% of teens thought that just flavoring was in their e-cigarettes. So that's a significant issue for us in the public health community, is that kids don't know what they're smoking, what they're vaping. They think it's just harmless water vapor that tastes like cherry bubble gum. When in fact, we know that the majority of these devices have nicotine in them. Nicotine use as a young adult is associated with a lot of developmental issues, including mood disorders and anxiety disorders. So nicotine use as a young adult is associated with a later risk of major depressive disorders, agoraphobia, which is anxiety of being in large crowded places, panic disorder, addiction to other substances, antisocial personality disorders, anxiety, and academic problems. How much nicotine is actually in an e-cigarette? Labeling is not always a reliable indicator. So we have a package of the Juul up on the screen, and on the package it lists 4-pod multi-pack, 5% strength. A Juul pod is just the flavoring component there that comes off the top, is interchangeable. So it's about the size of your thumbnail. 5% strength. 5% strength of what? They don't even mention nicotine on the package. Anyways, how much is 5%? This is a new concept that we're not familiar with as consumers. Most of you can understand maybe what like 5% alcohol is in a drink, but labeling something 5% strength is really misleading to the consumer. So what we know is that in one Juul pod, there's 59 milligrams per milliliter of nicotine. And again, saying 5%, even having that number 5 is such a small number versus having 59 milligrams per milliliter on there. I was looking at a vaping blog from, I think, vaping.com, and the question was, how much concentration e-liquid should I start with my e-cigarette? And I believe the recommendation was, well, start with 0 to 1 milligrams per milliliter if you've never smoked before. If you're a medium light smoker, you want 3 to 6 milligrams per milliliter. If you're a heavy smoker and you smoke unfiltered cigarettes, you would be around 12 or a little bit higher milligrams per milliliter. In the European Union, the maximum concentration of nicotine that can be sold is 20 milligrams per milliliter. That's the upper limit that the European Union has put on their products. So the Juul at 59 milligrams per milliliter is actually 3 times higher than what's allowed to be sold in the European Union. Juuls are not sold in Europe. To equate this to a package of cigarettes, so you have one Juul pod, 5% nicotine by volume, is about the same nicotine content as in a package of cigarettes, which has about 20 cigarettes in it. Some of the other products, for instance, these are the Sorin Drop and the Sorin Air, another popular brand of e-cigarettes. The Sorin Pod, which is the size of my hand, is 5.4% nicotine by volume, so a little bit higher than the Juul. The pod is a little bit bigger itself. It's actually the equivalent of 3 packets worth of cigarettes nicotine. So right here in my hand, I would have 5 packets of cigarettes worth of nicotine. So the amount of nicotine that you can consume with these products is really high, and it's hard to say how much nicotine or how fast somebody's going through these products. It's very variable. So I've tried to find on Reddit or other online sites, I've heard young adults say that they'll go through a jewel pod in a day. A lot of times these devices are shared, so it's really hard to say how quickly people are consuming them. Who's using e-cigarettes? This is data from the National Center for Health Statistics. It's a little bit older. It came out in 2015, looking at who's using these products. So you can see that the highest proportion of people that are using e-cigarettes are the 18 to 24-year-old age group. Almost a quarter of 18 to 24-year-olds 3 years ago were using these products. And then that decreases with age. Currently using these products, again, it's the highest among the 18 to 24-year-old age group. So there's a strong correlation there between age and usage. So this is why, again, as a public health community, we're really concerned about young adults using these. Why are they using them? So this is a study from the National Youth Tobacco Survey. The number 3 reason that young people were using these products was because the perceived belief that they are less harmful. Number 2 was the availability of flavors. There's over 15,000 flavors of e-cigarettes on the market today. And then the number 1 reason was that a friend or family member uses them. So this is what we would call a socially transmitted disease. It's something that you learn often from your parents or your older siblings or just your peer group. On the right is a tweet that Juul put out, having way too much fun at the Juul launch party. Juul is marketing itself to young adults, young, hip, fashion-forward girls. When we think back to these being introduced as smoking cessation, these girls are not looking for smoking cessation aids. So again, this is what we're facing with now, is this growing epidemic among young people versus the reality that we've seen over the past 50 years with smoking traditional cigarettes. It's the same challenge. There's a lot of similarities between e-cigarettes and traditional cigarettes, and we just have to go back and re-educate and do all the groundwork that we've accomplished in the past 50 years around traditional cigarettes. Ashley's going to step in and talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing here on Cuesta around e-cigarettes and traditional cigarette usage.
Okay. So, as Sherry said, in January, Cuesta will be 100% tobacco-free. So many colleges nationwide have gone 100% tobacco-free in recent years. What 100% tobacco-free policy means is basically, so right now Cuesta has smoking areas on campus, and that's where you're allowed to smoke. And you're allowed to use smokeless tobacco products on campus right now, like chew or snus. But as soon as the new policy is in effect, it means no tobacco products, so that includes even smokeless tobacco like snus and chew. It also includes e-cigarettes, it includes regular cigarettes, so the use of all tobacco products will be prohibited on any campus property, and campus property includes parking lots. And then just kind of like a timeline, the UC campuses went tobacco-free in 2014. Cal State campuses went tobacco-free in 2016. At the end of 2017, the board at Cuesta voted to become tobacco-free starting in 2019. And then in 2018, there was a vote among the California Community Colleges Board in favor of community colleges in California becoming tobacco-free. Okay, so why should we go tobacco-free? Decrease exposure to secondhand smoke. So secondhand smoke, we know is bad for us. The EPA has classified secondhand smoke as a Group A carcinogen, the most dangerous group of cancer-causing chemicals, and the Surgeon General has concluded that there is no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke. We want to change tobacco use behavior. So tobacco users that work in a completely smoke-free environment are more likely to quit smoking and are more likely to decrease the number of cigarettes smoked per day. And smoke-free campus policies have proven to decrease current smoking prevalence in students and the amount of cigarettes used by those who continue smoking. So it decreases the amount of smoking, which is a good goal. Protect workers. So if you are an employee on a campus that does not have a 100% tobacco-free policy, you can be exposed to secondhand smoke at work. Eliminate tobacco litter. So tobacco waste is incredibly toxic to our environment. Cigarette butts are the filters, and they have the toxic chemicals from the cigarette. And when they're littered, which cigarette butts are one of the most littered items, the chemicals can leach into the ground and into the water, and then also just young children or animals can pick those up and eat them. Oh, and fire. They can also start fires. Promote student success. So lots of workplaces are tobacco-free. So students that leave a 100% tobacco-free campus are going to be prepared to go to work in a tobacco-free environment. And decrease exposure to new tobacco products. So this is the perfect time to have a policy like this, because this is kind of the generation that's using these e-cigarettes, and if they're not allowed to be used on campus, that's going to decrease the amount that people are seeing their peers using them, because now that these are kind of normalizing smoking, and we see it here on campus, we need to get rid of that. Okay, so we're the tobacco control program with the County of San Luis Obispo, but we've partnered with Cuesta College. So this new policy, before it got voted on, there was like a policy task force that went to different groups and organizations on campus and asked for support, so who supported the new policy and what concerns they had. And we offered support in those meetings and education regarding tobacco-free policies on campuses. A public opinion survey has been conducted to gather information on support of the new policy, perception of harm from secondhand smoke, current tobacco use on campus, and best ways to support tobacco users and advertise the new policy. A key informant interview has been conducted with students, staff, faculty, and tobacco-free coalition members to address potential barriers to the new policy, how to get the information about tobacco resources to students, and what are the best resources we can offer for students and staff and faculty that use tobacco, and then ideas for what to do with the smoking areas once they're not smoking areas anymore. And we've done events and education on campus, like Great American Smokeout, Earth Day. This year we did a cigarette butt cleanup on campus, and then had a booth with information regarding tobacco resources and information on the environment and how tobacco affects it. And then the county offers free cessation classes throughout the county at multiple locations. And we've done some training with a future peer health educator here on campus, so that she can potentially teach cessation here on campus. And then I was going to share some of the findings of the survey that we did, because we just got those. So, we asked in the survey to get an idea of kind of how much people are being exposed to secondhand smoke. 58% of respondents reported being exposed to secondhand smoke on campus, and most of those people answered that they were exposed at least weekly or monthly. So that's pretty regularly, that's more than half, and we know that it's not good for you. So 73% of the respondents believe that the new policy will improve the overall health of the campus. So that's a lot of support for the new policy. As far as tobacco use on campus, 21% of respondents answered that they had used tobacco in the last 30 days. And then of those people, 31% used cigarettes, 59% used e-cigarettes, and 23% used another tobacco product. So as we can see, e-cigarettes are the popular smoking device here at Cuesta as well. And then there were we left a comment section, and a lot of the comments were things like they should still be able to smoke in smoking areas, or the smoking areas are the only social areas on campus, and then things like people smoke because they're stressed out, and then there were a lot of thank you, and I really support the new policy, and this will improve my health, like as asthma patients put stuff like that. So it's kind of some mixed comments in there. Going forward, we plan to continue supporting Cuesta during the implementation process. We will still have free classes throughout the county, and we'll make sure that Cuesta knows what free resources are out there for tobacco users that would like to quit. We'll still do events and education on campus. There's a great cougar smokeout that will be happening within a few months to kind of announce the new policy. And we hope to do a post survey in about a year after the policy goes into effect to see if it's affected the rate of smoking. Questions?
It was really good.
You have questions? I can't
No,
think of
I
a
don't
question
think any.
either.
Did we answer your name?
But thank you
Yeah.
for being a part of our Cuesta College community and helping Cuesta College with the process, and also for continuing to help us with the implementation of the process. We appreciate that a lot. You guys were instrumental, you two were instrumental in helping us become tobacco-free by getting the facts out there. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, my last parting words would be there's a lot of information, misinformation. If you Google e-cigarettes, 10 ads are going to come up before you actually get some real information. I would suggest, if you want more information, to go to the CDC's website. There's a lot of mixed reviews coming out, but the CDC will kind of give you the facts, bullet it out, what we know, what we don't know. We're not afraid to say that there's a lot we don't know about these products, but what we do know is kind of pointing us in a direction of concern.
Thank you.